Okay, kids, what we are going to do, we are going to cover the information in your book from topic 8.2 on pages 212 and 213. You're going to want to get your book out, pause the video, and take your book out so that you can follow along on the book. Alright, now, I'm going to give you a little bit of introductory information related to this topic of rational numbers on the number line. We've already learned that the coordinate plane is made up of two number lines, y and x. We know that you have quadrant 1, we know that you have quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. Okay? Now, we know that if you find a point located right on an intersection, you would have the ordered pair of positive 2, positive 1, okay? But not every point is going to land on an intersection. Some points will land somewhere in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how we divide each of these little squares up even further. And when we do that, we are going to get fractions and decimals in there. Okay? So that's what this lesson is going to talk about today. Alright, so let's take a look at locating fractions on the coordinate plane. Well, here's an example. Okay, they give you 2 points, and it's locating fractions within the coordinate plane. So they want us to locate point A. Well, this is a section of quadrant 1. We know that, positive, positive. We know that this is the y-axis and this is the x-axis. So if we want to find point A, this is the whole unit from here to there. We want to stop the halfway point. So we'd come over half that distance, and then we'd go 3/4 of the way up. Well, each of these is a quarter. So there's 1, 2, 3. So there would be point A. Point B, same situation. This is our distance on the x-axis. This is our distance on the y. 3/4 would be 1, 2, 3. 1/4 up would be right there. So that would be point B. Okay? And so this is how we would use fractions. Just remember, we're taking the squares and dividing them up. All right? Decimals would be the exact same scenario or situation if you were finding decimals on the coordinate plane. Again, we have quadrant 1 as our example area. This is one whole unit, but it's been divided into tenths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So when we are asked to find point A, what we're going to do is come over 4/10 on the x-axis. So we'd come over 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we go up 7/10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay? And that would give us our point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right there would be our point. Okay? And so that'd be point A. Point B, the same situation. This is our x-axis. This is our y-axis. We're not going to make it to a whole unit because we have a decimal. So we're going to come over 8/10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then up 3. 1, 2, 3. Right here. And you get point B. Alright? So that's how that would work. Now we're going to look at the overall coordinate plane using fractions and mixed numbers. Okay? Because your book's going to talk about and have you doing problems that involve mixed numbers. So if we were asked to locate this point right here, okay, you could see where we have our x-axis and our y-axis, and we can see where we have our units, and each unit is divided into fourths, okay, which is going to make it a little bit easier for us to locate points on the center of each one of these squares. All right, so this is our, of course, our x distance. This is our y distance. We can see that we have a positive negative, which means we're going to end up in quadrant 4. So here we go. We're going to come over 1 1/4, 1 and a quarter, and then down 1 1/2, 1 1/2. And that gives us this point right here. Okay, so that is this point. Notice that we came over in the positive distance, 1 1/4 right to there, and then we went down. All right, take another look at that. Here's another example of it. Okay, so in this case, they want us to locate negative 1 3/4, positive 1/2. Well, we know that this is going to be in quadrant, over and up, quadrant 2. So in this case, we're going to end up in quadrant 2. Negative 1 3/4, negative 1, go past 1 whole unit, and then 3/4, and then we prepare to go up the 1 1/2. So we're going to go up 1 1/2 to there. And that gives us this point right there. Okay? So that's how we would locate on the coordinate plane. Just remember the coordinate plane goes on in every direction, and you can divide each of the small squares into even smaller squares to find very exact locations. Okay? So, with that in mind, now we're going to take a look at the decimals on the coordinate plane. So in this case, we might be asked to locate the point of positive 1 5/10, negative 2/8. So in this case, we're going to be on the positive side again, going down. So we're going to end up in, again, quadrant 4, because we have the positive negative pattern. So we're going to come over, all the way over, and we have 1 2 3, we'd have to be over here, and then down to 2. So you can see where this would be broken up and extend. All right, we actually would need a larger one. Okay, so now let's take a look at what the book actually has to say. All right, let's take a look at what the book actually has to say. Now, the book, of course, starts us off with some examples, and it says, how can you describe points that have rational numbers as coordinates? A grid map of Washington, D.C. is shown at the right. What are the coordinates of the Jefferson Memorial? Well, this is our grid over here, and here are the different sites in Washington, D.C. You'll notice in your book that each site has a red dot, okay, that tells you where it is located on the coordinate plane. So you get exact intersections, okay? So then the book goes on to tell you on page 213 how to locate those points. Okay, gives us our same grid system, and it says you can use decimals for the coordinates. Find the Jefferson Memorial on the map. Well, here's the Jefferson Memorial right there. Follow grid lines directly to the y-axis to find, follow the grid lines directly to the x-axis to find the x-coordinate, 0.05. So we'd come over, and we are going to the Jefferson Memorial, so we'd come over to there, okay? And then it says follow the grid lines directly to the y-axis to find the y-coordinate. So we would come down 1 7/75. There's 1 whole unit right there. There's 1 2 3/4, which is 75/100, puts us at that layer. So when those two meet out here, there's the Jefferson Memorial. Okay? And the book then goes on to reinforce the idea that you can convert your decimals into fractions. You can also use fractions for the coordinates. Change the value of the coordinates from decimal to fraction. So you can see in your book that 5/10 is equal to 1/2. So the coordinate is 1/2 as a fraction. Negative 1 7/75 is equal to negative 1 3/4. So the y-coordinate is negative 1 3/4. The coordinates of the Jefferson Monument or Memorial can also be written as fractions, okay? And you're still going to find them the same way. Okay? So anyways, what I'd like you to do right now is we're going to do some practice problems. Okay? Let's take a look in your book and locate the following questions. Question 3 and 4. They want you to use the map in the instructional process. For 3 and 4, use the map above. Tell what is located at each set of coordinates. So why don't you pause the video and try answering those. Okay, let's see how well you did on this one. Okay, so in your book it'll be a little bit clearer. We have a positive 0 and 5/10, 0. So when we get on our y-axis, our x-axis, and we come over half the distance to 1, it would be right there. Okay, and it's 0 on the y-axis, so we're not going to go up or down. So the answer to number 3 is the ellipse. Number 4, we have a positive 3/4 and a negative 1.5. So again, we're going to come over, and tells us we're going to go into quadrant 4. So we're going to come over not to the full 1 unit. We're going to come over 3/4, and then we're going to come down a half, which will put us at the Washington Monument for number 4. All right. Let's try number 6. Number 6 is a little bit more complicated. It's a reasoning problem and talks about reflections. Okay, so you're going to have to use some reasoning here. In this case, the points 3, 4 and 3, -4 are reflections across the x-axis. So 3, 4 are reflections across the x-axis. That means from here down to there they reflect. They're in the same point, but they're across from each other of the x-axis. The y-coordinates of each point are opposite, and the points are the same distance from the x-axis. What are the coordinates of the point that is a reflection of the Jefferson Memorial across the y-axis? So now we're going to go across the y-axis from the Jefferson Memorial. So they want to know what would the coordinates be for that. So why don't you pause the video and see if you can come up with that answer. All right, well, if we look at the Jefferson Memorial, it's located right there at that point, and its coordinates would be 0.5, because we came over half that distance to the unit, and then we came down 1 full unit, and then 1, 2, 3. So what we've done is we've got a negative 1 3/4, or negative 1.75. Okay, and so we now know that if we want to reflect over here, we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to go on the other side of the y-axis. So we're going to hop over, and we're going to go negative 5/10, and then we want to be reflective, so we're going to be the same distance down, so it would be negative 1, and here's where our point would be, 1, 2, 3, and 75 hundredths. Okay, so that is a reflection across the y-axis. All right. Let's just jump on in to number 7 now. See if you can solve 7 and 8. They want you to copy the grid, graphing and labeling each point. So why don't you go ahead and make this grid or a quick sketch of it, and see if you can't locate where these points would be. All right, here we go. Let's locate point A. Point A is negative 2 5/10, positive 1 5/10. That means it's going to be in quadrant 2. So we come over 2 whole units to here, and then we go up 1 1/2 units. So we go up 1 1/2 unit. So right here would be point A, because we came over 1, 2.5, oops, it'd be right there, made a little mistake, and then up to there. So there's where point A would be. Okay? And occasionally mistakes will happen like that. All right, how about point B? Point B, we have a positive 2, positive 5.5, positive 1.5. So we're going to have come over 2 whole units to there, and then up 1.5, 1.5. Okay? And that would be point B. Came over 2, and then up 1.5. Point C, when you look at it, you're talking about a negative and a negative, so we're going to be in quadrant 3. So we're going to come over a negative 2, 1, 2, so we're right there. And then we're going to come down 1.5. So we're going to come down 1 and 1.5 to there. So that'd be point C. Then we want to find point D. Point D, we have a positive negative, so we're going to end up in quadrant 4. So if we come over 1.5 to there, 1.5 to there, and then down a whole unit to there, that would locate point D for us. Okay? And that's how you locate those points. Alrighty. Let's take a look in the book and see if you can do some of these problems. Okay? Pause the video and see if you can answer 13, 14, and 15. Alright, here we go. Number 13, here are your answers. Okay? Number 13, you have negative 7/10, negative 2/10, and you end up at the pond. So you would have, this is the whole unit to there, so you'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then down negative 2, 1, 2. So that puts you at the pond, right there. Puts you at the pond. Number 14, these coordinates, if you wrote them as a decimal, this would of course be 0 and 3/10. And then this, because you have 1/5, you would convert it into equivalent fraction. 5 times 2 is 10. 1 times 2 is 2. So this would actually be 2/10. And it's a negative. So negative 2/10. And so 14 is the start of the hiking trail, which is right here. So you come over a positive 3/10 and down negative 2/10. So you get the start of the hiking trail for number 14. Number 15 is picnic area number 1, and you have negative 8/10 and 3/5. Now again, if you were to turn that into tenths, you would do 5 times 2 is 10, 3 times 2 is 6, so this is actually going to be 6/10, and so we have negative 8/10, which would be right here, and then a positive 6/10, which would be right there. And so you get picnic area number 1. Alright? Pause the video and see if you can answer 16 and 17. Okay, here we go. They want you to give the ordered pair for each location. Picnic area 4, you come over to here and down. So this would be, area 4 would be negative 8/10, and you'd come down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, negative 6/10. And of course you're in quadrant 3. If you wrote those as fractions, it would be 8/10 simplified down to 4/5, and this would be 6/10 simplified down into 3/5. That's what you have as fractions. Okay, the end of the hiking trail you have over here, and so the end of the hiking trail would be right there, and you would have A positive